We're back again here, and what we need to do is we need to install our oxygen sensors on this exhaust job that we had done a little while ago. Right after we had completed the exhaust and took it for a drive, I did think that it was going to make a huge difference off the bat, but it didn't. Drivability was pretty much the same. It might have not bogged down as much, but we did increase top end speed, and I think that was from the restriction. Once we kind of got up to 120K, it kind of governed it with the flow. It wouldn't really let it kind of pick up past that. Now we don't have a problem there. It'll just keep climbing and climbing. I do believe that was a direct result of that plug catalytic converter. I think the reason that the drivability hasn't changed is because we do not have these oxygen sensors installed, and so therefore we're not getting a correct reading to adjust the engine for its parameters. It's kind of flying blind, so to speak, right now. Locally, I could not find little button, coupling, adapter, whatever you want to call this thing, and this is just gets welded onto the pipe, and then your oxygen sensor will thread into that. Drill your hole, weld it on, install your sensor. Simple as that, but I could not find this locally. What I did was, this was basically the plug that came with the new catalytic converter assembly that we had gotten. So I took this plug, I drilled the hole out, so that's a 1/4 inch drill bit, which is going to match our center drill bit here for the hole saw. The plug goes in there, and then that lines this up, and then we just drill that out of the pipe. And here it is there, that's where we've drilled it out, and then we've retrieved our button. In my case, what I've done is I've turned this down after drilling it, but if you don't have the ability to do that, what you could do is make sure that you've got a closer size hole saw there. I did not have a 1 inch. If I had a 1 inch hole saw, that would probably do the trick, and then you'd have this all done for you. And then once this is cut out, you find your location on your new pipe, and then you're just gonna weld that on there. So here's the pipe that we built and installed, and now we've got it removed here. And we just got that V-clamp style connection on this end, and then we've built our own flange to bolt it to the header right there. Well, it was still installed. I mark where the sensor has to go, because it's going to have to go on a proper angle in order for it to like kind of stick out in a free space where it doesn't interfere with anything else like the other exhaust pipe or the floor or whatever. So this was the location for the back, and then here was the location for the front. Now the oxygen sensors themselves was a 7/8 wrench to remove them, and there's the old ones. Here's a look at the two sensors side by side. This one's identified as the upstream sensor. The upstream sensor is going to be the one in between the exhaust manifold and the catalytic converter. So it is the first one down the pipe from the exhaust manifold. And then this is the downstream sensor, and then this is going to be down past the catalytic converter. The other thing is this is a wide band sensor, and then this is a narrow band sensor. I do believe this is a 0 to 5 volt, and then this is a 0 to 1 volt. So that is basically the difference in range of what it's sensing and the information that it's sending back. This one is your primary sensor. This is kind of like your important one here to adjust your fuel trims and stuff like that. And then this one is kind of like a double check to that one, the variance between the two kind of thing. I do believe this is the primary one that helps with the correct fuel delivery for the running of the engine, and then this one here would be sensing the oxygen after the catalytic converter, and then this would be kind of your secondary adjustment, so to speak, kind of thing. When we take a look at the two ends here, they're also different, so you can't mix them up. This one here on the right with the gray plug, that one you can see that the space between those two slots is greater than the one on the left with the black plug there. So that is how you can't mix these up. They can only plug in one location. That's going to help you make sure that it's installed properly. Then when it comes to installation, here are the marks again that we've decided where we want to install these things. And then what I'm going to do is use a step drill, and I'm going to get it down to like a 1 inch hole or a little bit greater than a 1 inch hole. Once I've done that, I have another one of my plugs here, and I basically drilled it, tapped it for a 3/8 bolt. I will thread the bolt into the plug, and then this is what I'm going to use as a handle to hold it into location when I tack it. And also too, with this bolt and that plug in there, that's going to protect the threads on the inside so you don't get any weld or anything on those threads. I don't know what the size of the thread is, but I do believe it's bigger than 16 mil. So I think it's a metric thread that goes in there. When it comes to the sensors, this is the one that I'm using for the upstream, which is the front one. Again, the upstream sensor goes between the exhaust manifold and the catalytic converter. And this is that sensor here, Bosch, and here's our part number. I don't, however, have one for the downstream, so I'm just gonna have to use the old one until I find a new one of these to switch out. We've installed those bungs. We've welded them into the pipes there. You can see on the left side, that is going to be our upstream coming off of our exhaust manifold, and then our downstream is going to connect closer to the muffler at the back here. In this case, I don't have enough space for my catalytic converter at the time. If I end up installing that, I'm going to have to reconfigure my pipes. But we're going to get these sensors in here, and we're going to drive this truck and see if it makes a difference. Obviously it should, because it's going to be basically setting the parameters of the engine for its running condition, where we didn't have that before. I also feel right now is the time to install the sensors. Better to plug them in underneath the truck than to try and twist those in place underneath the truck. Not a lot of room, hard to get your tools in, so I'm just going to thread them in right now and then install the whole assembly as one unit. Using the 7/8 wrench to twist those into place, and I'm also using some anti-seize when we install that for the heat and cooling cycles of the exhaust. Then that way in the future we've got a hope of removing them when we have to remove them in the future. This is our inside pipe here, and this is the back piece. So this is our V-clamp where we've got it bolted on. So this is a 13 millimeter. Just undo this clamp, slide it over this way, and then this should drop straight down. Up here in the front, this is our flange off of our exhaust header. And that is a 9/16 socket to get that off. We got one on this side, and we have another one on that side. So basically just the 3 fasteners should remove this whole pipe. Here is the upstream sensor, or the front sensor. And there is the downstream sensor, or the back sensor. So this downstream sensor, when it comes to the wiring, you take a look over here, here's where that wire is. Pretty lengthy, I don't know what's going on, but I kind of tuck it in behind that heat shield there, and it should stay in place. Kind of stuff it back in there. That's where the plug is going to be, in behind that. Hard to see, but this is directly above the transmission, and here's our plug right here. We don't have a whole lot of room or to get at it, so when you've got to unplug this and plug it back in, you got to prepare yourself. It's kind of a blind spot. Just be patient, take your time. So this plug is directly above the transmission on my truck, and if you take a look right here, this little ear, that's where there's a little kind of like a factory thing where this is supposed to plug in. It's kind of missing. It's hard. I can't find it for you here, but basically there's a thing that slides in there, and then it'll plug into here to hold your wiring down. Yeah, so this plug here, it's kind of like they did it backwards. The back sensor's got too much wire, and the front sensor doesn't have enough wire for their locations, but give you an idea where your plug is if you can't find it. The driving component of it really didn't change, but we want to note that I didn't put the oxygen sensors in there. With no oxygen sensors in there, the vehicle will default to a run-rich condition. With no oxygen sensors installed into the exhaust system, we're getting some codes. We've got a P0132, which is the PCM detects heated oxygen sensors reading too high. We've got a P0141, ECM tests the O2 sensor heater circuit and detects a problem with the bank 1. We got a P0172, fuel system too rich, bank 1. We have a P0135P, P means pending. ECM tested O2 sensor heater circuit and has detected a problem with O2 sensor heater circuit bank 1. So all this makes sense because we didn't have the O2 sensors installed. And then after we installed the O2 sensors and raised our codes, everything was pretty good. But we did get a P0172, which is fuel system 2 rich bank 1. So I raced that code again, and currently the truck is driving with no codes. One of the conditions that highlighted the need to take a look at the catalytic converter and upgrade the exhaust system was the fact that the gas mileage is really bad, but our gas mileage did not improve at all from what I had expected. I like to keep track of my fuel mileage, and this also helps me figure out if there's a problem with the truck. And as you can see here, so we've got some decent numbers. I don't know what's going on there. And we got some okay numbers here, but then here is where things really started to slide. And this was the area where I decided, well, we need to really do something with this exhaust and that catalytic converter. After changing the catalytic converter, you can see here we've got some dates back to back from the 18th to the 22nd. And this was in town. That was with no oxygen sensors. These two here are me commuting to work with no oxygen sensors. And this is the final one after I installed the oxygen sensors. Now when you're calculating your gas mileage here in Canada, we're by kilometers. We hit the trip odometer there. I'm going to run that number, how many kilometers, and then I'm going to multiply that by 0.62. And that's going to give me my miles. Likewise, I'm going to get the receipt, find out how many liters I put into the truck after fill, and when I fill it, I'm filling it right to the top so I can see the fuel right at the top of the filler neck. That way there's no misconception or anything, right? Sometimes I'll click out too soon if there's a vapor lock in there or something like that. I get that gas right up to the top where the cap's going to be, where I can see it, and then that's how I'm calculating an accurate measure. So then I'll take those liters and then I'll divide them. Because I'm in Canada, it's going to be 4.5. If you're in the US, it's going to be 3.8. And then once you've done that, now you can do your division from your miles to your gallons, and then you get your miles per gallon.